Today on the Movement Experience, I am honored to have the Honourable Mike DeJong as my guest. If you don't know Mike, he has been an MLA for Abbotsford West for over 30 years. He is the longest serving current MLA and the third longest in the province's history. We get to talk about politics, breaking the cardinal rule, never talk politics and religion. Now, we discuss his work over the last 30 years, but his work's not done yet. Mike has now announced that he will be running for EdFast's seat, and he will be running for the Conservative Party of Canada for Abbotsford's riding. I am excited to announce this with him, and I am excited to support him moving forward. Is Canada savable? I asked Mike that question. Tune in for his answer. I am your host, a husband, father, witty conversationalist, and co-founder of the Movement Real Estate Group. Join me for engaging discussions with friends where we navigate through business, goals, self-development, relationships, and our community, and whatever else captures our interest. Come join me on this journey as we rediscover the art of conversation. Hey guys, welcome back. This is Merrick with the Movement Experience, and this is episode 20, and I am honored to have the Honourable Mike DeJong in my studio today. So, thank you for being here.
Merrick, I'm moved. And episode 20.
Episode 20.
This is fantastic.
Yeah.
And when they do the greatest hits?
Yeah, it'll be the first greatest hit.
That's good to be here. I really appreciate it.
So, first of all, let's introduce you to the crowd. Who are you? What do you do?
My name is Mike DeJong, and for the last 30 years, I've been the MLA here in Abbotsford, mostly the western part of Abbotsford. When it started, it was Matsqui. It became Abbotsford Mount Lebanon, and then Abbotsford West. Mostly the western part of Abbotsford.
And you've been in office since 94.
94. So February 94.
Before Amazon was even Amazon.
When the Amazon was just a river in South America.
That's awesome. So you got in, you were first a trustee in Abbotsford, school trustee?
Got elected in 1990. I think I was about 23 years old. I was a school trustee.
You were 23?
Yeah.
Wow. So you've always wanted to be in politics?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I was always interested.
Yep.
And as a kid, I got involved. My hockey team was sponsored by a company, still a well-known company here, Ritchie Smith Feeds.
Okay.
Bill Ritchie was the MLA. I had no idea that one day I would sit in his seat, literally, as the MLA. But so that has always interested me. No history of politics in my family. My dad didn't have a very high opinion of politicians, quite frankly. I don't know if I changed that along the way. But
well, hopefully you did. That's funny. So you got in early. Why did you want to get into politics?
The school trustee. I mean, the notion. I was a lawyer. I went off to law school. I came back, was practicing law here in Abbotsford in the Fraser Valley. The dynamic of debate, the dynamic of creating public policy, dealing with issues, working with people. I mean, people. The kind of law I practiced was mostly about the people. I wasn't particularly, corporate.
Sure.
Document guy. I was more of a barrister than a solicitor, as they say. But the people are what make every day fun and an adventure, and just as there are a myriad of different kinds of politicians, obviously people of all walks of life.
Yeah.
So that part of it, I was very fortunate. I had some people, my family, my parents, but also teachers, former school principal who went on to become mayor of Abbotsford, who took me under their wing and introduced me and gave me some exposure to this stuff, and I liked it. And I'm very fortunate because when I ran for the first time for elected office, I got elected.
That helps.
That helps. So I got a good taste out the door. And then in the provincial by-election that you mentioned in 94, against someone that was the leader of a party that had governed BC for 40 years in a riding that had been social credit for 40 years, I managed to win by 41 votes.
Wow. Wow. So you're going to say your vote doesn't matter. I guess that's not exactly true.
There is it most certainly does, and that night served to remind me of that. And of course, there's the legend, not the accurate legend, of the guy, the MLA in Victoria, who lost his seat by one vote and hadn't voted himself.
Wow. Ooh.
Ouch.
Yeah, lesson learned, right?
Ouch.
That's a lifelong lesson you'll never forget. So you're actually the longest current sitting MLA.
I am.
And the third longest in all history.
Yeah. Podium finish.
That's unbelievable. So you looking back at your career, I've got a list of accomplishments here for us. So I'm going to toot your horn a little bit because I think it's fair that we do that for who's listening. But Abbotsford Hospital helped get that done, which is, I guess, includes the cancer ward as well. Matthews House, the Canuck House that are there. There's quite a few schools, airport expansion. I mean, Abbotsford's been your baby.
Yeah, I mean, I always might want to make the point. We take the hospital, for example. That same high school principal that gave me my start and assisted me politically and professionally, I would say if there is a guy who should be honored for finally getting the new hospital in 2008, it's George Perry.
Mm-hmm.
He toiled anonymously for 15 years. Now, I became the MLA and the minister, and we finally got it done.
Yep.
Most of the work, preparatory work, had been done. And like all of the projects you've mentioned, we talk about the airport, Dave Holmberg, Parm Sidhu. I mean, these are Henry Braun at a time, for a time, Bob Singleton. These are people that were on the airport authority that you worked with. None of these things get done by one person.
Right.
And that's true locally, and it's true in terms of the provincial government. If you can work with, if you can maneuver yourself into a position where you can have some influence and hopefully bring positive influence to bear, but you're not getting it done by yourself without the help of a lot of other people.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess this is an art in itself. Being a politician, you have to learn how to work with other people and sometimes tail wag the dog if it needs to be, or...
Yeah, learning about how government works, or in some cases how it doesn't work, and there's lots of evidence. I mean, in your line of work, where you're dealing with trying to provide homes to people, and we can talk about this. I'm sure we will. At some point. We use that term developer. I use the term builder. For some reason, developer has become a negative term. They're builders.
Yeah,
they build homes.
Yep.
What's negative about that? But when we talk about that, even that is a team effort that requires everyone, and how government works or doesn't work. I think that's the point I was trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
Is the delays associated with getting projects off the ground.
That's insane.
You know all about that, but it does take a period of time. Experience does matter because you learn a little bit about how to take a project and maneuver it through through government. And so people ask me, even at this 30 years, what about term limits? And it seems a bit self-serving on my part. I tell them, look, I understand some people think you shouldn't have people that serve for 30 years.
Right.
Took me about 10 years. Slow learner. It took me about 10 years to figure out how to really and efficiently get stuff done.
Right.
And now, trade-off, you get new people, you get new energy.
Right.
Right? New ideas, new energy, new approaches. That's a good thing, too.
Yep.
Probably what you want is a mix.
I would have, 100%. Yeah. Having someone with the, they've done it before. This is the track record. This is how we can do it. And then, looking at it from new eyes as well.
Well, if we take a sporting analogy, there's going to be a team that wins the Stanley Cup this year. They're probably going to do it with a mix of young players and a mix of veterans. Right?
That's right. Yeah. Fair enough. You big hockey guy?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. Not much of a player anymore, but I still try. My team, the Barley Hoppers. It's an autobiographical name, by the way.
So you guys, your family, were you born in Canada?
Yeah.
And your family immigrated from Holland?
Parents from Holland, after the sort of typical story from that country, immigrated after the Second World War, came here. We eventually settled on Matsby Prairie, where I still live, on the small family farm.
Oh, cool.
And my mom is still down there. She's going to turn 96 here in a few weeks.
Wow, good stock, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And a little birdie says that you've been recently married?
Yeah. I heard that. heard that.
I'm aware of it.
Oh, still.
What is this?
What is that? Yes, Isabel and I got married after a lengthy, multi-decade courtship. And the best story about that is when it was a year and a half ago, and I told my mom sort of a few months before that. And Isabel's from France, and has a family place in Burgundy. Yes, it's nice. So, Mom, I got to tell you something. I'm going to get married. Oh, very excited.
Yeah.
I said, we're going to do it in the village in France that she and my dad had visited a number of years before. Oh, she said, in the village in France. She said, well, I'm coming. I said, she was 94 at the time.
Right.
95. I said, you're coming all the way to Europe. My son, you have rekindled my faith in miracles. I would not miss this for the world.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so she did, and it was great, and it is great. It's
Has it changed your perspective on life at all, being married? I mean, you were dating for a long time, so.
Yeah, I can now say "you're right, dear" in 3 languages.
That's funny. Well, happy wife, happy life, as they say. So, I have a couple of questions. I'm not going to go verbatim on these questions as we go down, but I am curious to kind of walk through a bit of this. You don't really know what these questions are, so I'm going to kind of keep you on your toes, but here we go. So 30 years, why are you stepping down?
Time for a change. I think time for a change for the community, for the party, and for me. I've enjoyed the privilege of serving in that capacity immensely, and I really mean that. And I'll tell you, over the 30 years I've seen Merrick, I've seen a lot of people come and a lot of people go, and I've seen a lot of people go sadly bitter. And I never understood that, because the honor of representing your community in a provincial legislative assembly or a federal parliament is one of the greatest honors I can think of, and one of the most fascinating jobs I can think of. And so I used to, and sometimes my colleagues I'd hear them complain. I'd say, what are you complaining about?
Right.
This is a fantastic job, fantastic honor. And by the way, if you don't like it, stop, because there's no shortage of people that'll be happy to step into your shoes. So
there's like what, 87, 89?
And there will be 90 plus after the next election.
They're adding 2 in Burnaby, I think.
Surrey gets an extra one. Langley, there's a new Langley Abbotsford combo.
Yep.
And I think there's one in the Okanagan. I think there's one in the Okanagan as well.
So it'll be 91?
93.
93. Okay. Wow. Okay.
So
not a lot. Not a lot.
So
province of 5 million now, right?
Close to 5 million. And, you look at, I say to people, you look at the the number of people that have actually had the privilege of serving in the assembly, and it's pretty small.
Yeah, for sure.
Over the course of history. But having said that, it's been 30 years. I've done, I spent 16 and a half years on the government side. I got a chance to do some, people will judge for themselves whether they view what I did positively or not, and the government I was a member of. But the work for me was intensely stimulating, intellectually challenging, and I hope at the end of the day people found it productive. And it's just time. You mentioned a change in my personal life, although I will say this. When I did announce a couple of months ago that I wouldn't be seeking re-election, and my wife said, "You better not use that line I always hear politicians use about wanting to spend more time with their families." I said, "Why is that, dear?" She said, "Because I don't want you around that much." And I'll tell them that.
We got a great balance right now. Let's not rock the boat. Can I ask you a little bit about what's going on with the Conservative Party of BC versus BC United, which was the BC Liberals? So why the name change and the rebrand, and then what's going on with the Conservatives? Where'd they come from? Why are there,
Well,
I know they've been around for a while, but
there's always been a Conservative Party of British Columbia. What isn't widely known is that they are unaffiliated with the federal Conservative Party of Canada.
Right.
But why has that split occurred? And it's a really important question, because that split of the free enterprise vote ultimately is going to decide the next election in October provincially.
100%.
If it persists, I'll say it right now. If it persists, the NDP will win re-election.
Yeah, you're gonna split the vote on that side, and then
General rule of thumb is the free enterprise vote can probably surrender 12% and still cobble together a victory.
right.
Anything over that, certainly anything over 15%, and the NDP suddenly is winning ridings that they wouldn't otherwise win, and they're winning them with 37% of the vote.
Right. Yeah, because it's first past the post, right?
First past the post.
Yeah, okay. And for those that don't know in Radioland, basically, if you've got 100 people voting, it's the whoever's getting the most out of those.
Four candidates that get 25%. The one that gets 26% wins all the marbles.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but your question, I think, was even deeper than that. Why has this happened?
Yes.
I think that the decision to change the name of the BC Liberal Party, which was a coalition, again, unaffiliated with the federal party, but that was a constant challenge.
People saw it.
People thought there was a connection,
Right.
were confused. Now, you can say that, but the BC Liberal Party, which was in fact a coalition of federal Conservatives and federal Liberals, it was the free enterprise vote,
Right.
won the popular vote except for 2020, won the popular vote in 6 straight elections.
Wow.
So if there was confusion,
Yeah.
however, the decision was made to rebrand the party, to remove any lingering notion of an affiliation with any federal party, take a neutral name, BC United.
Right.
Rebranding is tough,
Yeah.
and the parties, political parties, don't have an endless supply. We're not Coca-Cola. We don't. Right. We don't. So I think that has created some confusion. At the same time, the federal Conservative Party of Canada has increased dramatically in popularity and has a very popular leader.
Yeah.
So the thing to be cautious about are the polls, which may reflect that in a disproportionate way. But I will say this: today, that split, which I don't think exists to the degree polls reflect it,
Right.
but today that split is probably is worrisome for me as a free enterpriser.
Right.
That it will facilitate I mean, it's happened for the elections in my lifetime, not yours, but in my lifetime where this has taken place. In 1972, after 20 years, I think it's fair to say that the public voted out the social credit of W.A.C. Bennett, and they voted in the NDP.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1991, there was a split between the Social Credit Party and the new emerging BC Liberal Party.
Right.
In 1996, there was a split on the right between the BC Liberal Party and a provincial Reform Party.
Okay.
The NDP won.
Right.
And so those are the examples that I can think of off the top of my head where a split in the free enterprise vote facilitated the election of an NDP government. And I fear that may happen again.
Right. I don't want to put you in the hot seat. If you can't answer this question, then don't answer it. But is this like a argument between actual policy, or is this an argument between the leadership of these parties? Because I mean, I look at the policies and they're pretty similar.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's policies versus personalities.
Yeah.
And
again, you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Well, no, I'm happy. Look, I know what's gonna. I know what's gonna happen. 17 seconds after an NDP victory in an election in October, the entire free enterprise movement is going to say, well, we got to get together.
100%.
Right?
100%.
And
why can't we just do that now?
And so why can't that happen
right
now? I would say this. There has always been a small group of British Columbians who have formed a Conservative Party of BC.
Yep.
And I dare say, and it's democracy, it's not I dare say those are folks who have never wanted to join forces with a center-right free enterprise party.
Right.
Like the BC Liberals or BC United. But quite frankly, that historically has been about 5 or 6% of the vote.
Right.
And has not been sort of an issue in terms of, at the moment, that group has grown. But to your point, if you actually sit down and walk through the policies, and people will find there is a whole lot more in common between the BC United, which is the official opposition right now,
yep,
and what I think, to the extent that you can discern what some of the formal policies are on the part of the BC Conservative Party,
right,
there is a lot more that draws those two groups together
mm-hmm.
than separates them. And I am hopeful, but time is marching on. And time is running short.
An election could be called at any time as well, right?
Any election at any time. The Premier, Mr. Eby, says it won't happen until October. So
right.
there is that amount of time, but that's 5 months away.
Yeah, not a long time.
No.
All right. Well, yeah. So what do you think of the state of the province right now?
Got a mess.
I know you're leaving, but what do you think? I mean, you guys were in 16 years. You were finance minister for 5 years, balanced budget every single time. And we had 3% growth or something like that?
Or more.
Or more?
Yeah.
So how can we have a balanced budget and then now we don't? They're saying infrastructure. We're building infrastructure. What's really going on?
We got look, I'm departing the provincial stage, and I'm generally a glass half full kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And just so everyone watching and listening, if I am abroad, if I'm outside of Canada, I have this belief. I always tout our horn. I always tell people that I'm from the greatest country in the world, and you want to come here, and
yep.
Whatever problems we have, we'll deal with. Because I just think when you're Canadian, you want to be part of Team Canada, and I've always done that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes governments, when I've been in opposition, are surprised when they get reports that I have spoken abroad in their favor. I don't hang out the dirty laundry.
Right.
But we're not abroad.
We're very local.
We're right here in BC, and we got a hell of a mess. And you're right about in 2017, and I am proud of this, and I have gotten a little bit tired of the revisionist history that it has been convenient for people like members of the NDP government and like Premier Eby to write. We had the top economy in Canada. We had the best set of books.
Mm-hmm.
No other province. We had surpluses. We had all but eliminated the operating debt that had accumulated over time from deficits, from operating deficits. And people forget, in 2008, we borrowed billions of dollars. We had deficits from 2008 for 3 or 4 years. But when I became finance minister, we did something that no other jurisdiction seems interested in doing. The money we borrowed, we paid it all back.
Right.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Imagine borrowing money as a government and then saying, okay, let's pay it back.
Yeah.
We get the economy going, and let's start to pay it back. We had the AAA credit rating. We had all of those things. Now, to be fair, we had the fastest growing economy in the country.
Mm-hmm.
There were challenges associated with that. Growth challenges. Housing costs started to escalate. Nowhere near as bad as over the last 7 years.
Yeah.
But the early signs were there. People wanted to come here, and they wanted to invest here.
Right.
And I grew up believing that was part of my job as a minister, as a finance minister, as a forest minister, even as an attorney general,
mm-hmm.
to say to people, we want you to come here, we want you to invest your money, we want you to create jobs, we want you to employ people, and we want you to succeed.
100%, yeah.
Somewhere along the line, that narrative has been fundamentally rewritten, and now we have governments. We are, as you mentioned, 4.5 million British Columbians. The government this year tabled a budget with a deficit that's going to be $9 billion.
Yeah.
$9 billion.
Yeah. Which people get so tuned out to how much money that is. Like a million seconds is 12 days. You've heard this, I'm sure. A billion seconds, 31 years. A trillion seconds, 31,000 years. Like people, like Trudeau. Now I'm jumping to federal, but since he's been in power, we've doubled our national debt, doubled it. So all of the 150 years that we've been, and then the last was 8. That under him, it's doubled.
And he's done a remarkable job trying to convince Canadians that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? That it doesn't, and yet it does. And when you look at the fact that in a few short years, I mean, we're already in the 40, it'll take 60 billion plus just to pay the interest on the money that's been borrowed. Yeah,
I've seen this. This is disgusting. I mean, what's our Canadian, the Armed Forces, like $28 billion budget or something like that?
Yeah.
And we're going to have $60 billion going to interest on the money we're borrowing now.
And so, Merrick, what you'll find, and I'm sure you have found this, so when you start to talk about this, and politicians on the left, Mr. Trudeau, Mr. Eby, Mr. Singh, and they immediately tell you, well, what are you going to cut?
Right.
How are you going to deal with it? And the first thing, and for a while, I can tell people are a bit defensive about that.
Yep.
But my reply now is, no. You're the government. What are you going to cut? Because as those interest payment as those debt servicing charges go up, you have only 2 choices.
Right.
You are either going to cut services or you are going to raise taxes.
Yeah.
Which is it?
Yeah. They're probably going to have to do both with the $60 billion interest bill.
Because they refuse to address what is actually going to be the recipe to help get us out of this mess.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same in 2001 when my group became the government of British Columbia. Yeah, there is a lot of waste in government, and we have to address that, certainly at the national
100%
national level. We, in my view, got to find a way to reduce taxation, not increase it. And by the way, that people think that's counterintuitive, but our first day in office in 2001, we introduced a 25% personal income tax rate. The next year, we got more money from income tax than the previous year. Why? Because people started coming back.
Right.
People started investing. People thought they might succeed here again. But the reason you do that is because ultimately, a mess on the magnitude, a fiscal mess on the magnitude that we are looking at here, will ultimately only be addressed by growing the economy.
Right.
Right. The rising tide raises all boats, and and if you think about, and I'm going to say this as a generality, and if I were outside of the country, I wouldn't say it, but I'll say it inside the country. We have become the country of no. You can't do anything in Canada anymore.
100%. Yeah. We have all the natural resources on the planet. Like, we have such a wealth of stuff that we have in our land, and it just sits there.
And why aren't we saying to the world, why aren't we showing the world the right way
100%
to do this?
100%.
I'm not saying we go out there and rape and pillage the landscape. Let's show the world the right way.
Yeah, you can be you can have environmental stewardship and still have your products get to market. Yeah. I don't think it has to be one or the other. And the reality is, if we can generate, you want to talk about making the world a better place in the long term. If we are making clean power, and we can sell power to people who are not making clean power, you're doing a better service for the entire globe. You know what I mean? By doing it that way.
I think it is bordering on criminals too hard. It is shameful.
Yeah,
I'll use that word. It is shameful that at a time when our allies in Europe are looking for ways to
100%
remove their dependency on Russian energy, Russian natural gas, we have the means to set, and we refuse to. The Prime Minister refuses.
It doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense. And literally, I completely agree with you. I think about it all the time. Why aren't we helping Europe? Isn't there a pipeline or something we could do? Is there some sort of a system that we can get where we can supply them all their needs? I mean, why are we bringing in, I think we're still bringing in oil from Saudi Arabia. For what?
LNG could provide, it is a far cleaner alternative. Why we are not, we have the second largest reserves in the world. Mm-hmm. why we aren't taking advantage of that, activating it, and making it available. And yet the Prime Minister and the current government are hostile. They are openly hostile to that. And it's why Canada, and I hate saying this, I don't want to be a revisionist historian either. When Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister, he had great international reviews. Canada was flying high, and people, what was it, Bono, not Sonny, the other one, said the world needs more Canadas. I mean, that's where we were.
Right.
Today, no one thinks of Canada, and if they do, it's because we're an unreliable ally.
100%.
And
I'm honestly, I've never been more embarrassed. I'm like you, proud to be Canadian my entire life. Get the tattoo on the arm and wear it with pride when you're walking through another country because you're proud of Canada's history. What we did during the Great Wars and stuff like that, and all the things that Canada has done for years, and who we have been to peacekeeper throughout the world for 100 and something years. And now in the last 8 years, it's embarrassing.
We have squandered we're a middle power. We're not a superpower. I don't think we pretend to be. I don't think we want to be.
Right.
But we have historically been a place that economically was a safe harbor. And that's gone.
Yeah, 100%.
And that
not corrupt. We used at a world level, people looked at us with integrity,
reliable. And we have in the last 7 years squandered all of that. I think we can rebuild it. I'm not distraught, or I think we can rebuild it. I think we will rebuild it because I think that's who we are as Canadians. I think the pendulum will turn. But I don't think it'll happen under the present government.
So what does that look like for you moving forward? I mean, I'm jumping a little bit ahead here, but what can we do?
Well, the first thing we do is we get our fiscal house in order.
Okay.
And we be honest with Canadians about where we're at, what the implications of persisting down that path are. And it's not sustainable. Any reasonable person will know. If you're sitting around your kitchen table and you're trying to do the books, you realize that if you're spending 5 times as much as you're getting in on a consistent basis, you're looking for trouble. You're gonna, and that's, so we have to be honest with, and it's not going to be easy. We have to begin to grow our economy. We have to turn the open for business sign back on. Because it's been languishing in the dark for too long. And I'll say one other thing. We've got to domestically get serious about bringing a greater sense of law and order to this country. And I am not, look, I was a prosecutor as a lawyer. I was a defense. I'm not one of those guys who, my whole life I've been beating up on the justice system, but it has lost, largely as a result of directions it has gotten from the federal government, this present federal government, and the experiment that has failed miserably and completely, and that is the legalization of all the hard drugs. This was touted by so-called experts here in BC and politicians in Ottawa and Victoria as the answer to, we were going to, and we always hear this term, we don't want to stigmatize people. I don't want to stigmatize people either, but I want to stigmatize the products. The products are not safe. Stop telling me that cocaine is safe. Stop telling me that heroin is safe. It's not safe. It's ruining lives. And these governments' answer is not to provide people with the detox and the services that they require to get off these products. It's to condemn them to a life of dependency and perpetuity. And now, imagine if you're a 12-year-old kid in school today, all you're hearing from governments is about this safe supply.
Right.
Well, I'll try that.
Sounds safe.
Yeah. So so that's got to change. That is, I just find whatever the ideology and whatever, by the way, the motivation, which I'm not questioning the motivation. But it hasn't worked. And that's why Oregon and Portland have done a 180. They've said, no, this is a mess.
Well, I mean, it was getting bad down there in Oregon and stuff like that. In Portland, it's anywhere down on that whole western seaboard. Seattle's got their problems. LA, San Francisco, we do too in Vancouver. It's bad. It's bad. I think you mentioned at an event you were saying you had family in from out of town. You almost didn't want to bring them down there. You were so ashamed.
It sounds terrible to say, but I didn't want to tour them through Vancouver in its present state.
Right.
It's deplorable.
What I see when I see people on the streets like that is I see people who have had immense amounts of trauma, and these people need help. And sometimes they don't want to make that decision for themselves, but we need to help them. And letting them live on the streets isn't compassion.
And I think the vast majority of Canadians would echo precisely what you said, and would say, instead of devoting all of this funds to the development of safe drug products, let's make sure that there's a detox and treatment available when people need it. Because the problem today, and I'll tell you this from personal experience, you'll have someone who has gone through this some turmoil in their lives, has become dependent, begins to understand, and eventually does understand how this drug or drugs have taken control of their lives, and goes through a tremendous amount of pain in the process, but comes to the point where they say, that's it, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to be controlled. Help me. Help me. And as a society and we and health authorities, we say, right, well, we might have an opening in 4 months.
Yeah, perfect. If that person's coming to that conclusion at that moment, you have to strike when the iron is hot. You got to get them in that day. You got to help them that day. Because they finally come to that rock bottom place where they're willing to put the work in. Yeah. And if they don't do it, you can take them through the course so many times, and it's going to be back to the same thing.
I had a guy here from Abbotsford who used to travel with me when I went to India, originally from Punjab, and I'll never forget. We were in a counseling treatment facility in Punjab, and he had been here. I had never known him to take a drink. He was an alcoholic.
Sure.
And he got in front of those guys, and these young men, there's politicians like me, they don't want to hear from me. They don't care. And he said that to them. He said, all these are good people and they're well-intentioned, but it's up to you. Only you have to come to the conclusion. And what we can do as a society is provide some tools to help people get there. But at the end of the day, and those tools, like you said, if we're gonna frame a house, don't give me a hammer in 3 months.
Right. Yeah, you need it now.
I need the tools now.
Yeah. And you can't make a lasting change in these people's lives by giving them free drugs, but you can by giving them the tools to get clean. And then guess what? They get clean, and then they become a tax-paying, contributing member of society, and that should be the goal of it. And eventually, over time, their contributions to by paying their taxes because they now work helps pay off, whatever cost the province to get the tools that they needed. So I mean, the way I look at it, I just look at it as like, people are trying to be compassionate, but it's like sleeping under a bridge isn't compassion.
Well, and then there's another feature to this this whole discussion about law and order, because there's a whole group of people that, as we've been discussing, fall into that category where they've descended into this hell. And there's another group, and it is happily a smaller group, but these are bad people. These are criminals. Yeah. And they have made a purposeful choice in their lives to take shortcuts, to steal from people, right, or to otherwise harm them. Those people need to go to jail.
For longer than a weekend.
Yeah.
I think we've been, as far as I've always remembered in Canada, pretty soft on crime and repeat offending and stuff like that.
I don't know that I do know. I would not have said this 30 years ago, but I think what concerns me is the criminal justice system has lost legitimacy in the eyes of too many Canadians now. The argument for mandatory minimum sentencing, I think, is stronger now than ever before. You commit a crime with a firearm, you're going to jail.
Yeah, for sure.
Period.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't fire. It doesn't matter. You're going. We somehow have to send the signal. Sentencing is supposed to be also about deterrence, and we have lost the deterrent component.
I was about to say that. Yeah, exactly. If it's like, oh, what will happen if you get caught stealing this car? Oh, nothing. I'll be out next weekend, and blah blah blah, and then I'll have a court date in 6 months, but I won't show up for it. It won't matter.
The guy in Terrace, 40 times he went through the revolving door. Right. 40 times. arrested, and every time he smashes a storefront, I mean, I want to sometimes, and I ask folks, in the government, he smashed that storefront. That cost that shop owner, who's not wealthy,
right,
a little business that he or she is running, it costs them $15,000 that they don't have. So every time this guy comes through, causes this down, and catch and release, the pinnacle, the granddaddy of, he goes into a Canadian Tire and shoplifts, at least the report used the term shoplifts, a canoe. Is that the quintessential Canadian crime?
Yeah, where are you sticking that thing?
Yeah, where?
Yeah. Sir, can we check your backpack? There's a massive canoe hanging out the back of it. Yeah. That's
so
hilarious.
we laugh about it, but that's what it's come to. That this guy walks out of the store with a canoe.
No, we have to have a country of law and order. You can't have a country that's in order without laws that are, meant to protect people's property, people's stuff, like safety, stuff like that. So, yeah, we've been a little bit soft in my opinion.
Well, and there is a rule. So, some of your listeners may or may not know, while the province tends to run the courts and provide the prosecutors, the criminal law is set by the federal parliament in Ottawa. The criminal code is a federal statute.
Right.
So the direction, and the criminal code creates crimes, right? It's a set of rules that we all have to live by. And it also provides direction to the courts.
Right.
And those directions, in my view, today need to be made more specific and need to create a level of deterrent that doesn't exist.
100%. If there's no punishment, then go do it.
The other argument, by the way, about that, Merrick, is we can, by the time someone has committed 30 crimes without serious sanction, they're probably going to continue to create crimes. Whereas someone that is confronted by a serious enough sanction first or second time out, may actually gets, maybe they came from an uneducated background and gets some training or get some supports within the prison. I'm not saying put someone in a dark cell and throw away the key. But if that happens sooner rather than later, maybe that person can be saved.
Well, 100%. And our system, our judicial system, we're set up to rehabilitate people. We want them back into society, paying taxes, working, doing their job, having kids, living a good life. It's not about creating career-long criminals. We want to rehabilitate. We want to get people out of that track.
Well, we better start doing that before they've committed 40 crimes.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. So you're done provincially. Are you hanging them up?
Well, I'm done at the next election provincially. I won't run. We've got a few more weeks to go in terms of the legislative session, and
right.
I'll be there doing my duty. About 2 years ago, I heard a guy on the radio, and I was watching, obviously, the provincial government. I was watching coming out of COVID. I was watching the federal government. I was watching these mounting deficits, and I was asking myself, why isn't anyone talking about this? Why isn't anyone talking? It was so plain to me where we were headed with this. That, and I'll say this: I acknowledge that in the year 2020, none of us knew what COVID represented. We were seeing pictures from Europe that were frightening. Right, Italy was one of the first jurisdictions. And so we shut down the economy, and the government stepped in to provide support. I'm not quarreling philosophically with the role of government. In fact, I'm proud of the fact that when that happened, I wasn't the government, but the government of BC was in a better position than any other government in North America because of the work we had done previously to actually provide those supports. Fast forward 2 years, and I go, but they haven't stopped. They've accelerated the spending. I thought this was a temporary measure. No one was talking about. No one, and it wasn't very popular. It wasn't very chic. No one. Oh well, things are looking okay. Pierre Poilievre, in a press conference, started talking about this, and I stopped the car and I took out the 8-track and put the radio, put the radio on louder, and I listened to him talk about how this was not sustainable. And I said, that's the first guy to have the courage to buck the trend and lead. Because sometimes leading, you don't lead from behind in the parade. Sometimes leading means alerting people to what you see as a looming problem.
Right.
And so I called him and I said, I admire that, and that led to me endorsing him in the leadership contest that he eventually won.
Mm-hmm.
And at a certain point, the invitation was, well, you should, if you're interested, you should join us. We want to field a team that will contest the next federal election. And I said, well, that's interesting. I'll think about that. But we have a member of parliament here that I'm fond of and support, named Ed Fast, and he served the community very well. When I resigned or announced my intention to resign provincially, I didn't know what the situation was. Now, in the last few weeks, Ed Fast has announced that he too will not run for re-election federally, and I was inundated with calls from people in Abbotsford, in Langley, and really right around British Columbia, asking that I consider putting the skates on in the federal league. And so I'm going to do that. Now, in order to do that, there's a nomination contest. There will be a number of people vying for the opportunity to be the Conservative Party of Canada candidate in the new riding of Abbotsford South Langley. I'll be one of those, and we'll see. We'll see if
when does that process start?
Starting now.
Okay.
And so for people watching or listening to this program, if you're interested in being involved, now's your chance. Take out a membership in the Conservative Party of Canada, and you'll have an opportunity, if you live in the riding of Abbotsford South Langley, you'll have an opportunity to select who the candidate is. I'm one of those people vying for the honor of doing that, and that will probably extend over the next couple of months, next 6 weeks or so, and then the membership in the Conservative Party in that riding will decide who they want to be their candidate.
Because I mean, they've got to pick the candidate before, and the election's coming up.
The election I expect will be next year.
Yeah.
I mean, it could theoretically be at any point.
I don't think they would pull an election right now with how bad they're doing the polls.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Could be, has to be by next fall of 2025.
Right.
Pretty good chance, in my view, this is Mike's prediction, could be in the spring.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Right. So it's all hats to the races. So you're obviously 30 years-ish, right? Is it over 30 years now?
Over 30 years now.
So 30 plus years Parliament, in BC
Legislative
Thank
Assembly.
you.
Yeah.
Now, how does that directly translate over to the Fed? How's that going to be? What are you bringing with you in experience? What are you hoping to learn that's maybe a little bit different?
Well, it's always about learning. I mean, even in Victoria, every day is a learning experience. Look, I mean, when it comes to governance in a parliamentary democracy, I have 30 years experience. I served in the cabinet for 17 years, finance minister for 5 years. So understanding the relationship, as I say, how to get things done, what is required, for example, to rebuild an economy. Now, acknowledging that in my case, my experience focused on one of 10 provinces.
Right.
And this is a big country, and there are different dynamics at play, but I think that experience is relevant, and a lot of the work and a lot of the success we had actually related to the work we were able to do in partnership with local governments and the federal government. So whether it was securing infrastructure funding, whether it was trying to advance the notion of a common securities regulator for Canada.
Right.
I mean, you may know that we're the only country that doesn't have a single securities regulator, which is a bizarre bizarre state of affairs, but not something that I'm sure people think about when they go to bed at night. But
maybe a couple people get lying awake. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay,
when are we going to fix that?
Yeah, what's going on?
So, but these are things that the aerospace sector is something that I have long felt holds a secret to family supporting growth and family supporting jobs here in the Lower Mainland, in right from Hope into Vancouver, Abbotsford Airport. We have aerospace companies on site there with some imaginative use of taxation levers, and by that I mean reducing taxation. I think we could see aerospace in Abbotsford. I think we could become the Western hub, or and maybe even the Canadian hub. I don't even think that's an exaggeration. I think we could become the Canadian hub. We've got a world-leading fire suppression company. We've got a world-leading HERC. We got a world-leading helicopter and flight training facility in Chinook. I mean, we have these. We've got a guy running the airport that I'm a huge fan of in Parham to do, who understands how to put the open for business sign out there, right? That's why these companies, these airlines, and we always think about airports, we think about passenger traffic. That's really important. But all of this is the product of having a guy who understands, and an airport authority that understands, if we're going to attract people here, we have to make it attractive.
Yeah, that's so funny. I mean, you drive. So the way I was raised as a kid was a healthy business sector gives you lots of tax money where you can fund your social programs. But it comes from a healthy business sector first. If you don't have that engine generating income, your country's in trouble. Whereas you go socialist first, you go look at all these programs. I mean, what does it take, like 3 private sector people to pay for 1 public sector salary? Something like that, 2 or 3?
And the only job growth we are seeing in this province, in this largely this country right now, is public sector, governmental, and government consumes wealth. It doesn't create it.
That's right.
And you're so right. I say to my friends on the other side of the aisle, and again, I'm well past calling people evil and calling them names. I think most people that get into public life are well motivated.
Yeah.
But I said, you can't help people with good intentions alone.
Correct. Yeah.
We have to generate the wealth to actually help them.
And if you don't, and you just keep printing money, then you get runaway inflation and all this other stuff. Yeah. Like it comes from somewhere, and inflation being at like 3% or this and that feels like it's at 50%. Because I walk into the grocery store, and I look at buying some steak for dinner, and it's $86 for 3 steaks, and I'm like, looks like it's ground beef, honey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, it's I mean, I grew up with in a family of 4 kids. Too. Someone with 6. A family of 6, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah,
I go into the like you, and I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, it's everything's getting so expensive though. I mean, I understand wanting to have a emphasis on trying to be green. I'm more of a believer. Like I'm not sold on climate change in the certain context that they say. Like a lot of the factors that I've seen, the sun. When they're doing global warming, they're not factoring the sun has a temperature variance where it can go up and down. It's like a set thing. So there's some data that's like could be construed different ways. So I'm not sold on just I'm going to give the government more money and that's somehow going to solve the world's problems.
Well, the carbon tax started it started in BC and one in Quebec. It started at $5, a couple of pennies. And it was by law revenue neutral. It was really a tax shift.
Right.
So for every dollar that came in, income tax had to be reduced by a comparable amount. What it's turned into is a cash grab.
100%.
Right. It's turned into this massive cash grab by governments who don't want any constraints. And look, I told you I'm on the same farm. There is something going on, and I'll tell you why. Because when I was a kid, you always got 2 crops of hay. Mm-hmm. If you were lucky, you got a 3rd crop. Last year, we got 5 crops.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's without irrigation. So the irony where we are is in the short term, whatever is happening. We got more vineyards,
Right.
Where that eventually leads could be problematic. So I'm not suggesting that there hasn't been change and that we have to, but you do not address that at a time when people can't go to the grocery store,
Right,
and even buy the groceries they need. And now you're going to increase the carbon tax and what they're paying at the pump, or what they're paying to heat their home.
Yeah.
I mean, I get food producers, chicken farmers around Abbotsford who show me their natural gas bill. The carbon tax is higher than the cost of the gas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
That doesn't make sense
At all.
I got hell from a few years ago from the opposition. I eliminated 90% of the then much reduced carbon tax for I think actually more than that, almost 100% for greenhouse growers.
Right.
You're giving, what are you doing? I said, well, this is a tax that penalizes people for producing CO2.
Right.
They have to produce. They can't grow the food without it.
Yeah.
We're penalizing. Otherwise, we're penalizing them.
Yeah.
For producing the very product they need to produce the food. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then I mean, I don't understand how people don't think that this is going to make everything more expensive. The truck driver that drives the food to the grocery store is paying more money.
It's cumulative.
The farmer is paying more money. Everyone, and then you're paying tax on top of the carbon tax, which is wild. Yeah. Which I've seen reports where it's like that by itself is like $5 billion in revenue by a certain date and stuff like that. Where it's just like you can't help but like. I mean, I know people like the millennials looking to go to Mexico, looking to go to Europe, looking to go to the States. It's I grew up in when I was younger, when I was in high school, the future of Canada looked better for me than it did for my parents. And now I look at the future of Canada and I look at a worse life for my children than me, and me worse than my parents.
Well, and that traditional, go to school, go to work, buy a home, live happily ever after with your family.
Yeah.
Well, the prospect of buying a home. And by the way, if I hear one more person tell me about the land shortage, I'm going to get on top of the Mission Bridge and scream. We're in the second largest country in the world. We do not have a land shortage.
Yeah.
Can we please be honest with people? What we do is make decisions about the vast amount of land that we have.
100%.
But we do not have a land shortage.
No. And that's... the density too, like we're always just getting so tight on density and stuff like that. I mean, we have so much space that we could open up and create more communities even.
We do, and I'm not suggesting. So I live on Matsqui Prairie, best farmland in the country. I'm not suggesting we build houses on Matsqui Prairie or Sumas Prairie.
Yep, I agree with you.
I like the fact that I live in the ALR, but you head north of Mission. We've got all of this land, and if we're talking about densification,
right.
Bringing a surface rail link in from Surrey Langley all the way out to the Abbotsford Airport along the Fraser Highway corridor, and as a condition of that, because it's expensive, you got to pay. We just upzone it, legislatively upzone it, so that they can get up in the morning, they can put their bunny slippers on, they can go get their cup of coffee, go down an elevator, and get on a train and go into work wherever along that corridor, and we got to be honest with people, and particularly young people. I don't think the cost of a detached home in Vancouver is going to go down.
No, it won't.
What we have to do is create sufficient volume of alternatives. I think even in a place like Abbotsford, for most young people, and you're the expert on this, but their entry into the housing market, which I'd like to facilitate sooner rather than later, as quickly as possible, probably going to be a condo, maybe a townhouse.
Yeah,
right?
It has. Yeah, you got to get on the escalator.
Yeah,
you got to start climbing it. Yeah,
and
the sooner you get on, the younger you are, the smaller the family, the better.
And let's be upfront about that, and let's facilitate the construction of more of those, so that the price pressure starts to come down.
Yeah. I think this is a balancing act too, though, because you've got a lot of baby boomers I don't want to call and baby boomers out, but like their equity is their retirement.
Yeah.
They didn't maybe do a lot of the the other types of investments and stuff like that. So they're sitting on $300,000 to $800,000 in equity, and that's all they have for retirement. So I find it's a tough balancing act that you have to do as a politician, because if you start dumping all the supply in, all of a sudden these old these people sitting in these old houses are now losing equity because the values are going down. So it's kind of like, how do you balance that?
Well, that's, you put your finger on a good thing, because I can tell you the number of times, a cab driver or someone has said to me, you got to do something about the cost, the price of homes, and I explore that with them.
Yeah,
and we all have to be a little bit careful about our own capacity for double standard, because what some people mean is decrease the other person value of the other person's home, not mine. And we're all like that to
every
a
single
certain
person
extent,
is
right?
like, you ask them, you go like, oh, are you cool if we densify and add more homes? Oh yeah, absolutely. Young families need more homes. We're going to build them in your backyard. What? No way.
and that's why I believe the way to do that is to tie that densification to improved services, and by that I mean transit services.
100%.
Right? So you can say to people, look, and I would say this when I was finance minister, and people would ask, and we built the Evergreen line, we built and then people want out to UBC. I said, I'm all in favor of taking SkyTrain out to UBC. All in favor. But folks, you can't build SkyTrain past white picket fences.
Right.
Sorry, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, because everyone talks, we all want to talk about, and we all talk about our travel experiences in London and Paris and New York, but those are densified routes.
Yeah.
So along those routes, that neighborhood is going to change.
Right. Yeah. I know nobody wants it in their own backyard. But I mean, I think that's the way to go. You got to attack the supply side. The demand side, you can only do so much on, and we've been massaging, for lack of a better word, that for a while, and it's not helped.
It's the signal that has come from this country and this province in the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
Instead of capitalizing on the reputation we had as a place where people wanted to come to, we basically sent a message to the world: don't come here.
Oh yeah,
right.
And
you're not welcome.
And sent it in a poor way, like a very, very bad taste in everyone's mouth with the way we sent it. Yeah. Like, people are coming here living under bridges. Like, people, like, I have my brother's South Asian, so my sister married a South Asian, and anyone that he knows that's coming from India, he's talking to him like they're going back or they're leaving, and they're literally saying to the people in India that would have come, don't come, stuff like that.
Our governments, our bureaucracies have, I am sorry to say this, but we have acquired an arrogance built around the notion that the whole world is clamoring to come here.
Yeah.
They're actually not.
Yeah.
And they have lots of choices.
Yeah.
And it's time we realize that even in places like India, there is this huge middle class. And every time we say to someone from that jurisdiction that wants to come here to visit for a wedding or a funeral, and we just arbitrarily say no. Yeah. Based on this bias we have that all these people want to come here and stay. Some people want to come here and stay. They apply, but a lot of people have pretty good lives in other parts of the world. Yeah. And we're competing like never before with other countries. Exactly. You want to look at some of the policies Italy has in place where they pay you to go live in some of the smaller villages in Italy. Yeah. Not a bad gig. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we're competing with, there's going to be a baby shortage in all Western countries. I mean, the people don't really look at a population collapse, but this is a very real problem that we could be facing in the future. So we're not replacing ourselves in Canada right now. No, we're not. I think we're at 1.48 or something like that, like per couple. Kids per couple, something like that. So we're not replacing ourselves. So our population growth purely on immigration. Mamma mia. Yeah. Hey, and you know what? My dad's an immigrant, so I'm a son of an immigrant. I love immigrants. This should be the place that you want to come, but we can't live on laurels from 40 years ago. Nope. We have to be the place today. So let's get back into I want to ask you a couple more questions in the Fed before I let you go. Yeah. So you want to represent Abbotsford. What are you going to do? What do you hope to bring to the table? I know you've got the experience here provincially, but like, what can we do? Right. What do you hope to do at a federal level? Right. So beyond some of those broad pan-Canadian questions about helping to bring a sense of fiscal discipline, helping to rebuild our tarnished reputation internationally,
and it is,
and it is.
Yeah.
When I look around Abbotsford and see the acquiring some federal buy-in to improving transit infrastructure, those are costly projects. Acquiring, altering the taxation structure in a way that advances the aerospace sector in Canada generally. But I think we're well positioned to take advantage of that here. I mean, those are some of the areas that I think. And obviously, one of the last project I approved as the chair of Treasury Board and Finance Minister when I was in government, Finance Minister, was the Abbotsford Courthouse, the new Supreme Court building.
Great job, by the way. It looks really nice.
And what I'd like to do at the federal level is amend the criminal code so what takes place within those walls better reflects the expectations of my neighbors here in Abbotsford.
Yeah, I like that.
Who have lost faith in the justice system.
Yeah, I mean, it's you don't want to invest in a country. You put your hard and work and money into it. If you feel like your stuff isn't safe when you go to bed at night, or you wake up and your car's gone out of your driveway or whatever else, it's not a good feeling. So, the Fed, they're responsible for our trade at the national level. What are we going to do for trade? What can we do to encourage the growth of our economy? This is, before you answer that question, let's say the Conservatives get in. Pierre Poilievre gets in. Let's say you get in. You're now working at the federal level. He's taking over a hot bag of garbage. Like, our economy is... this is my fear. I'll just say my fear, and you can answer the fear. My fear is that he gets in. It's so bad, we're not seeing the results that we need to see in order for a re-election. Because it's so bad. Is that a likely scenario?
Yeah,
can we make change quickly?
Yeah, fair enough. But I think, Merrick, the first thing I learned, especially after an election where you've received a mandate, don't become preoccupied with your re-election, because what you acquire after an election is a mandate, hopefully a mandate for change. And some of that change will offend some people.
Yeah, it's going to be painful for some people.
And if you're too timid because you're immediately thinking about, if you're doing the right things for the right reasons, to rebuild an economy, to create jobs, I think I have a lot of faith in people's willingness and ability to understand what's motivating the change and understand it will take a bit of time.
The light at the end of the tunnel.
That's right. So that's the first thing I would say in that regard is.
So you can't be afraid. You got to look at the decisions that you got to make. They're hard decisions, but they're the long-term better decisions.
You got to create that climate. You got to turn on the open for business sign again and get the economy moving.
Now, can you do that with trade? Are we going to be able to get our stuff to market here, or what's the biggest way to move the needle?
Well, first of all, I think we've been 10 years now without 8 years without a softwood lumber agreement for BC. That's hugely important.
Wow.
And no one seems to be attaching much importance to that. Topic for another day. I have my theories on why that is, but the federal government negotiates those types of treaties. The last one I was intimately involved with because I was the forest minister here. But there doesn't seem to be any priority either in Ottawa or in BC. It's our biggest industry. It's our biggest manufacturing sector. No one seems to be engaged in trying to solve that issue. There's this is trade per se, but it's certainly binational. We've obviously a couple of years ago, Sumas Lake recreated itself, and the devastating impact that had on thousands of families here in Abbotsford. And to Mayor Ross's credit, and before him Mayor Braun and the council here, some important steps have been made. I have to acknowledge the province has stepped up and provided some funding for pump infrastructure. That's all good. But the underlying issue, and problem is twice now in the last 30 years, the Nooksack River has slipped its banks and flowed north. None of those changes address that, and that is a huge, huge risk. It'll happen again.
Yep.
And taking steps to address that, mostly on the U.S. side of the border, but perhaps somewhat on the Canadian side. And there is a body called the International Joint Commission, the IJC, that needs to be engaged. It's the body. It's the federal government in Canada, the federal government in the U.S., panel of experts to definitively state what needs to be done to prevent the Nooksack River from flowing into Canada, or if it is going to flow into Canada, how we contain the flow.
Right.
And that is going to cost, I expect, several billions of dollars. We can't pay for that in Abbotsford. We can't probably pay for it in BC.
Right.
We need the precedent for this is what happened in Winnipeg, right? Winnipeg had a number of years ago a massive flooding issue, and the IJC came along and they settled on what the work needed to be done. The federal government. So, I mean, there's a case of bilateral, binational, transboundary border issues that somehow has been lost in the ether, and we're scurrying around doing what we can on the Canadian side and the BC side and the Abbotsford side of the border, but we may discover through the work of an expert panel that some of our money is best invested on the U.S. side of the border.
Yeah.
To prevent the risk in the first place.
Right.
So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else is on the docket? What else would you want?
Oh, well, you look at our post-secondary. Let me give you an example. At a national level, we have a physician shortage. We have a serious physician shortage in this province, in this country.
I was actually at a doctor on the other week. 6,800 doctors in Canada are 65 years or older. 6,800.
They're retiring, and the new doctors, not a criticism, but they don't want to work the same hours that the old doctors did.
I know we need a 3-to-1
and
replacement.
We've got thousands of foreign-trained doctors. These are Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
These aren't even foreigners. These are Canadians who went abroad to some really dubious schools, like in London and in Germany and France. I mean, these are all accredited medical schools.
Right.
And we don't let them practice.
Yeah, it's wild.
And that requires a definitive and purposeful intervention by the federal government to say to these various colleges, look, enough of the turf war. We can't afford that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to establish an expedited credentialing committee. If you graduate from those universities that are world renowned, and you can write the entrance exam you are getting a residence and you're going to work. We accept you, and we are again losing thousands of these doctors to other jurisdictions who say, come on in.
Right. Open arms.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of my pet peeves too. I was looking at it too as well. The Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, the territories, the Maritimes, they all have their own administrations. So it's like potentially money could be saved if you streamline some of these administrations, right? You've got like, what is Ontario, like 16 million people, something crazy. They've got their one administration. We're 5 million, we have ours, but then you've got like 5 million between all the territories, those two provinces, and so it's like, it seems like a lot of top end spending that could get streamlined as well.
I had a lady come into the office last year from Abbotsford, a young lady, went down to Brigham Young University.
Mm-hmm.
Brigham Young's got a pretty good reputation.
Yep.
Did her nursing, got her nursing degree, did her exams in Utah, fully credentialed nurse. Then came home, I think probably for Christmas, and starting to explore the job market, got hired at Royal Columbian Hospital. Desperate need, nursing shortage. She finally called my office, I think 14 months after she had waited for her file to be and it still hadn't been.
Wow.
14 months. And this is what troubles me. So you make the calls, and I said to her, well, look, I can make the calls. I don't think they're going to listen to me. I don't think they care. I said, there's only one thing I said, I'll make one call if you're willing. And she was. Next day, she was on the front page of the Vancouver Province.
Yeah.
2 days later, she had her credentials.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have to work like that.
No, it shouldn't.
Shouldn't have to work like that.
I find it too, and this is just my own personal experience. I find a lot of the times in, with approvals and stuff like that with the city, so I deal with that on the real estate side, and things get kicked onto other people's desks for no reason. Like my brother was waiting for a dump permit signed off. The guy went on vacation, so nobody would sign it off until he came back. Like stuff like that, where it's just like, I almost want to pay them by approvals. Like you're going to get a base salary plus a bonus on approvals. And the more approvals you do, the more you get through, the more money you guys make.
Creating incentives or for expedited processes.
Yeah.
Or just, I'll tell you one thing, in government I try to do with certain amounts of legislation, and there was always pushback from the bureaucracy. You think about your relationship with the state, whether it's you're paying your taxes, there's always deadlines. You have to do it by such and such.
Sure.
You have to do it by such and such. You have to submit this by such. And, it's only gotten worse. For small business people, I pity them. I don't know. I mean, just the amount of additional paperwork now and filings. And so everyone has a deadline attached to them except government itself.
Right.
Government never wants to impose a deadline on itself.
Mm-hmm.
And in a couple of instances, I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to impose that deadline, and if a decision isn't made, and it can be pro or con, but if a decision isn't made within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, the project is deemed approved. So you guys figure it out.
Yeah,
right.
It's a pretty big incentive. Get them going. I mean, and honestly, like I thought of a Nexus Pass for developers. You guys have got a great track record, no complaints. You're putting up a good product. You guys are on the express lane here.
Here we are. We were talking about this housing issue, which is for young people and others a real issue. Back in 2017, Merrick, the mayor of Vancouver was a guy named Gregor Robertson. Used to be an MLA. I knew him a little bit. Didn't know him that well. Nice enough guy.
Sure.
Got himself elected mayor of Vancouver. I'm listening to the radio one day. I think it was NW, maybe it was CBC. Don't know. And he's talking about the housing crisis, the developing housing crisis. I said, okay. He went off. A couple hours later, I called the mayor's office. Said, can you put me through to the mayor? In those days, they would put my calls through. I was the finance minister. So I get Mayor Robertson. I said, Gregor, how are you? He said, oh, fine, Mike. Nice to hear you. I said, I heard you on the radio. Yeah. He's, well, I said, no, don't be defensive. I heard you. I said, I heard you talk about the housing crisis. My question for you is, how many applications for new homes, they might be condos, they might be apartments, they might be, right, but how many units of housing, how many pending applications are there in Vancouver, Metro Vancouver today that are relevant to that? He was silent. He goes, well, I don't know. I said, well, don't you think you should? Because the thing that troubles me a lot about this conversation, and sometimes my colleagues and I have been guilty, we talk about housing and government constructed housing as if the great middle class housing crisis is going to be solved by government. It's not. Government doesn't have the money to build all those houses. But the good news is it doesn't have to.
Right.
The private sector has the capital, and if we allow them to proceed, 120,000. Let's assume, just for the sake of argument, that the greedy builders, that half of them are in place. Someone wanted to build a 30-story condo in Stanley Park, right? Whatever. We're not going to let that happen. So
right.
Let's just assume it's not 120,000. It's 60,000. Well, you put 60,000 units. You grant timely approvals. I said to him, Gregor, there is a 30-unit development somewhere off Burrard Street. It's 30 units. It's like a low-rise, 6-story low-rise thing. Has been waiting for approval for 6 years. 6 years. I said, I'm sure that I don't understand all the intricacies, but I do understand this. It took us 5 years to win World War II.
Yeah.
That was a pretty complicated affair.
I would say so. Yeah, it's a valid
by comparison.
Point. Yeah.
And anyway, I mean, so
it's environmental on environmental. They want this survey, that survey. There's no one that's really pulling the triggers in there. It's everyone kicks it to the next guy's desk.
If we have a crisis, which people say, and I see evidence of, then let us respond as if it is a crisis.
Yeah, 100%.
Let us mobilize to address the crisis.
Yeah, yeah. It's been too slow for so long, and it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. I mean, like, since I've been in real estate for 8 years. When I first started, I sold a house on Westbury in Abbotsford for $360,000, 8,600 square foot lot. It did back onto the freeway, but under 400,000. Now that house is 900, 950 in that exact location, right?
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It's you look at the monthly payments and the carrying charges on the more, and it's anyway, there are, again, I'm not the eternal pessimist, I'm the eternal optimist. There are ways to address this. Part of it, in the case of housing, involves unleashing the private sector
100%.
and not falling into the trap. There is a role for government. So whether supportive housing, the market is not necessarily well equipped to provide some of the supportive housing needs that we have. I get that.
100%.
So let's have government focus there, and let's unleash the private sector, the builders. Let's give them access to the land. Let's let them get to it and
100%.
start building some houses.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So what else would you want to tackle on the federal level?
Well, we've talked about foreign relations a little bit. These are areas. I think I am offended. I'll use that term at the way our visa system operates, or doesn't.
That's right, doesn't.
Here in Abbotsford, we see this a lot in terms of the South Asian populations in India, Pakistan. But it's true anywhere. I saw a family wanted to come here for a Christmas visit from Central America.
Right.
And well-to-do, they're living. I mean, it was minus 20 here, and they're coming from a climate of 30. I don't think they want to stay here, right? They want to come for a visit at Christmas time.
Yeah.
The 60-page form that they are obliged to fill out online in English.
Right.
In English or French.
Yeah.
But not Spanish.
Right.
So these people look at this and go, yeah, I'll go to the U.S.
Yeah.
I'll go to Australia.
A little bit easier.
Little easier.
I'll take my tourist dollars there.
Take all my money there.
Yeah.
And, I said to a federal minister one time, because I over the last 30 years, I've dealt with people. They're here in tears because grandma just wants to come to the wedding.
Yeah.
Right. And anyway, and I said to the minister, "Have you ever been refused entry into a country?" Well, what do you mean? Well, I said, because I haven't.
Right.
But I know this. If a country ever told me that I wasn't welcome there, I would never go there, let alone invest there.
100%. 100%. Yeah. You'd get a bad taste in your mouth, and not only would you not go, you'd tell all your friends not to go.
And we have this incredibly bureaucratic system that is so arbitrary, and we are telling people literally, and it's not a case of money. I mean, it's unfair to everyone, but we are telling people in countries, who are people who are well-to-do have no desire to relocate because their life is beautiful in the country of their country of residence, and we just say no.
Right.
No.
Right.
Anyway,
is Canada savable?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because we've seen elements of this in the past. I don't want to diminish the challenge. The challenge
work that
ahead
needs to be done.
Yeah, and
we never had this level of debt before.
No, we certainly have not, and that's where being honest with Canadians, even heading into the election, I think that's going to be important because politicians, when you're campaigning, it's natural that you need to paint a picture of where we can get to. I mean, that's, people want hope, and you want to convey a vision for what we can be again and be better. But I think this time out, there is also an obligation on politicians, at least I think, to be honest with Canadians about the challenge associated with getting there, and be forthright about that, and forthright about the magnitude of the challenge. And look, this is a partisan statement, but Mr. Trudeau is not going to tell anyone that.
No.
He wants everyone to think everything's fine.
Yeah, which is, I mean, even the GDP numbers that they release, it's our GDP per person's going down, but we're bringing in immigrants, so it's like making the GDP look okay. Yeah. But if you factor that kind of stuff in, we're already quasi-ly in a recession. Like, there's a lot of kind of smoke and mirror things going on.
We'll take BC as an example, Merrick. The economy, the economy is small business, to be sure.
Sure.
But small business is strongly influenced by major projects.
Right.
We've had 3. We had Site C, we had LNG, and we had the pipeline that came through British Columbia.
Right.
The provincial government that's in power now, when they were in opposition, opposed all 3 of those strenuously.
Yeah.
And were reluctant, but eventually forced to allow them to proceed. And that drove a lot of economic activity, small business. They're all coming to an end.
Yeah.
Where's the next project?
I don't know. There
isn't one, because governments federally and provincially have said no to every single proposal.
No, I mean, this is provincial, but don't we need, doesn't BC Hydro need a whole bunch of refurbishment on a bunch of their stuff? Isn't there a big investment that needs to go into BC Hydro and stuff too?
A big investment, and again, the government says, well, we're going to make that investment. Well, who's going to pay for that?
Yeah.
Right? Ratepayers are people of BC, and this, forgive me for sounding a little bit bitter, but this from the government, because now they're talking about an energy shortage.
Right.
Right. This from a government that 6 years ago actually, was saying we didn't need Site C. Well, it turns out we need 4 of them.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
It drives me mental that we have the ability to produce really clean power. Really clean. The cleanest in the world. Maybe you could put it up against nuclear, but we don't have the waste.
No waste.
Right? So it's like you have the opportunity to make this power. You can sell it to Alberta. Alberta now needs help in their grid. California, all the way down the coast, needs help with power.
I made the proposal back in 17, 18, and even after the government changed here. What a logical Fed provincial cost-sharing project, an expanded transmission line from Site C into the Alberta grid. Now,
right.
It turns out we probably need most of that power now. Why? Well, because we've all got computers. We've all got 30 chargers in our house, and now we got more electric vehicles. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But why people wouldn't have seen back then? And I get a lot of people who come to me and they were opposed to Site C, or they're opposed to LNG, and I say this to them. I go, look. Democracy is a wonderful thing. You are fully entitled to be opposed to and to articulate that opposition. But here's what I think you also have a responsibility to do. You're not in favor of nuclear, okay? I get that. You're not in favor of hydro, Site C. Okay.
Right.
You're not in favor of LNG and natural gas. You're not in favor of coal. We go. You got to be in favor of something.
Yeah.
You can't just say no to everything.
Right.
And you tell me what you're in favor of, and I'll accept your opposition. But you got to be in favor of something.
Right.
And if you're not in favor of something, I want you to leave your car in the garage and turn your computer off and buy some candles.
Yeah, start eating bark.
You got to be in favor of something.
Yeah, we all need power. And I mean, the respirators in the hospital, all that kind of stuff, it all runs on something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know. I just think that it's sometimes we're too local focused when, it's like, oh, you want to make a lasting change in carbon production? Well, let's start supplying people with cleaner alternatives for fuel and stuff like that, because we can do it here. We
can do all. we're the luckiest country in the world. We got it all.
We really do.
We got it all.
All the resources in the world, the beauty in the world. Like, it's a beautiful place to live. Yeah. It's just so darn expensive now these days. It's insane.
Yeah, we're pricing ourselves. We're pricing ourselves out of our market, and we're pricing families out of their communities, and that's a bad thing. And I haven't given you my idea for a tax incentive for podcast hosts.
Well, that was my very next question. All right, last question. I ask people this, and we'll end on this one because I've taken enough of your time, and I appreciate your time. So I want you to imagine an alternative reality. You can live as long as you want, and you can accomplish everything that you want in your lifetime. But at a certain point, the lights have to go out, and you have to go to the next whatever. But your work in this alternate reality cannot stay behind. So none of the accomplishments that you have can stay behind, except for 3 truths. You can pass on 3 truths to the next generation. What are you telling them? 3 truths, 3 principles of life that you find to be true.
Honesty is a good place to start. I think that is that's what I was taught. If you can be honest with people about everything, sometimes it's hard to do. You're going to hurt someone's feelings, but honesty is a good place to start. Work hard. Somewhere along the line, we have lost, and I blame political leaders for this, and I'll even include myself in that, as I'm trying to make amends now. People need to work. It's good for them, and our society requires it. Yeah. And somewhere along the line, the message has been altered. It's, you don't have to work. Maybe. Yeah. Right. So that's and 3. Ask for 3 more. Help your community, right? Yeah. You will derive far more pleasure and contentment from working with, and help your community might mean help your neighborhood. Yeah. I mean, it means something. It doesn't mean seeking elected office. That's the route for some. Yep. But it might be that park at the end of your street that just needs someone to go in and do a little, whatever it is. You will derive a lifetime, and maybe an extra beyond lifetime degree of pleasure and satisfaction from helping to make your community and helping your neighbors and helping to make your community a better place. Yeah, that's something that I've maybe it's an age thing. As I'm getting older, I'm not even 40 yet. So, but as I get more towards my 40s, I start looking around more. Stop looking at in your 20s, you're looking at yourself. What do I want? What do I want? Where do I want to go? Whatever. You get a little bit older, and now I've got kids. I've got a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and I'm looking at them, and I look at my community, and I'm going to go, oh, I need to do something. I need to put my shoulder to the stone and push. It's my turn, and that's kind of something that's kind of more coming alive to me as a millennial. We've never been in the situation where we've been in the driver's seat. Now the millennial generation is getting older. We're actually a large cohort of the voting public now, and I wouldn't say that we're totally driving, but we're part of that decision. And I think it's harder now. And I don't usually say I'm not one of these guys who sort of laments the poor but I think for all the reasons and others that we've talked about, if I compare your circumstance, I'm 20 years behind you. The amount of time you need to devote, your wife, to maintaining a standard of living is greater than what I had to. Right. So the amount of the squeeze on you to find time for these philanthropic endeavors or to make that extra contribution is tougher. It's tougher to find because you're by necessity spending more time. We talked about the $400,000 house. It's $900,000.
Yeah.
The payments on that, right? So
it's a huge commitment.
People that decide to make that commitment and are heroes, and those are, we tend to celebrate sports heroes, and I'm like anyone else. I like that. But the real heroes in our community and in our country are the people that make those contributions away from the spotlight, seeking and receiving very little recognition, but making their community a better place.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It's the unsung heroes. A lot of the times they just,
well, kind of like broadcasters who do this, who spark. And by the way, I'll make this my final gratuitous comment. That the technology that makes a broadcast like this possible is often criticized, and sometimes I'm the one criticizing it. You see a lot of terrible commentary, people hiding behind anonymity, and the vocabulary and the use of language is, I think, I'm all for robust, spirited debate.
Yeah.
But Gerald Ford, former president of the U.S., once told me, not when he was president, but he told me, he says, we can disagree without being disagreeable.
Right.
And you're using the technology to spur discussion, debate, consideration. I think that's a good thing, because if there's one thing that concerns me in the grandest sense about our country and our democracy, it's the lack of engagement.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It is the unwillingness that for people, many people, young people, to and some of it's born out of distraction, some of it's born out of a belief they can't make a difference. Hey, I'm the 41 vote guy.
Right.
You can make a difference.
Yeah. 100%. Well, I mean, you're right on, though. I think a lot of people are apathetic. I think my generation is waking up more. I'm seeing more and more. I'll see it at parties. I'll talk to people or something like that, and they'll be like, "Oh, what about this or that policy?" And I'm like, "Policy? What are you guys talking about?" You know what I mean? Whereas before, we live in a world, like you said, of distraction. Entertainment, movies, shows, everything is just distract.
And our attention span is shorter than it once was.
Yeah, we went from, if you look in the 60s, how long the movies were, lots of dialogue. Then by the time it got to Jaws, it was and CGI.
Best line I heard from a movie star, Michael Caine? All right, he's 100 years old now.
Yep.
There was Jaws 1, Roy Schneider and Dreyfuss and all, and Jaws 2, and I think Schneider was in Jaws 2. Studio got, and it's Spielberg, right?
Yeah.
Spielberg got out of it. Studio couldn't resist. They think, we're going to suck a little more money out of it. We're going to do a Jaws 3. But none of the original guys wanted to be part of it.
Right.
They knew that Brutus the shark had devoured his last. So they got Michael Caine. No one knows. So Michael Caine is on, it's Letterman or one of those guys, Conan. And they ask him the question and about Jaws 3. And you can see him cringe. He goes, oh, he's going to ask about that. So they ask him about Jaws 3. And he says, David, I am proud to say that I have never seen Jaws 3. I understand it's absolutely terrible. However, he says, I have seen the mansion in Berkhamshire that it bought me, and it's absolutely wonderful.
That's so funny. I love it. Yeah. So that's it. That's a podcast. That's all I had for you. What do you have for me? You got any questions? Anything you wanted to say? Anything left on the table before we say goodbye to audience land?
No, I think we should give people a chance to go recharge their glass. My God, if you're still awake. Hey, thanks for tuning in.
One last thing before, how can we support you at the federal level? What can someone do to help you get to the federal?
Well, if notwithstanding this glimpse of Mike DeJong unplugged, compliments of Merrick, if people listening and watching to this believe I have something to offer at the federal level, there is a nomination contest taking place. I am a candidate for that in the constituency of Abbotsford South Langley. Become a member of the Conservative Party of Canada. If that's a party you are predisposed to support.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll have an opportunity to select the candidate, and I hope you'll select me.
Yep. Well, there we go. It's coming up, and you're not running unopposed. I think there's a couple other guys.
3 or 4 others.
So
it's robust democracy.
Yeah, can't assume that you're just going to get it. If you like Mike's track record, go out, support him, get involved, because you can't just assume that someone's going to get in because he's known. You actually have to earn it, win it, and that's what you're doing.
You got to earn. People ask me, politicians are always supposed to be confident about election results.
Right.
I ran in 8 provincial elections. I started every campaign with the view that I was behind and we weren't going to win, and we had to earn that win.
Smart.
Worked 8 times.
Yeah.
See if it works another time.
There you go. Well, I'll be voting for you. I'll support you, and if I got to knock doors for you, I will. So there you go.
Thanks, my friend.
Thanks for coming
Thanks
on.
for this.
I appreciate it.
Fantastic.
Thank you.